Welcome everybody to another episode of SAP CodeTalk. I'm this time your host, DJ. I'm a developer advocate, and we're doing a lot more code talks with lots of awesome people, including today. So the guest we have for today's episode of SAP CodeTalk is Daniel Schlachter, who works in the CAP area. That's all I'm going to say for now. I'm going to say hi, Daniel, and thank you for joining. And tell us a bit about yourself first.
Hi, DJ. Thanks for having me. Yes, so my name is Daniel Schlachter. I work in the CAP team, and since roughly, a bit more than a year ago now, we have a so-called enablement team that really focuses on how we work together with our customers, with our projects, what kind of tutorials are out there, and how the CAP team works with the outside world a little bit and integrates with other products in SAP as well. Exactly. So that's my role.
Perfect. Well, welcome, Daniel, to SAP CodeTalk. So enablement, I mean, that is a fantastically useful word to sort of contextualize what the topic of conversation is this time, which is the concept of the CAP plugins. So let's start out. Daniel, tell us, what is a CAP plugin and what are they used for?
Yeah, I mean, basically, on a very fundamental level, like a plugin is just, a way to provide a piece of functionality in a more generic way and in a reusable way. And it started out really very, very small. So, if you look at Node.js, when we have like a dependency, we just started to look into every dependency and look if there's a CDS plugin, and that's a file. And if it's there, we just execute it the same as you would know from like the server.js of a CAP application. And so it started out really small with like 10 lines of code, but then it was really about how can we use this, and it became very quickly used in many different places where we wanted to provide functionality to CAP, but not have it in our core framework. So we provided it as those plugins. Yeah.
Nice.
Sure. And maybe the best way to explain it is maybe to give one example out of the ones that we have delivered already, which is change tracking. And change tracking is really just, you can imagine, a lot of applications need to know if I have an important object, like let's say a contract, right? And someone makes a change, I don't only want to see the result, I want to know who made that change, when was that change made, what was the value before, what was it afterwards. And I maybe also want to be able to track those changes, so I need like a user interface that shows me all the changes that have happened in the system. And previously every project would have had to take care of this themselves. It would have been 1,000 lines of code that you have to write, that you have to maintain. And now it's as easy as, adding the change tracking plugin as a dependency to your project, and a few annotations where you say, okay, this entity needs to be change tracked, and we take care about, all the rest happening in the background.
I mean, that whole concept and the way it works is absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, I think many of us, including me, got to know about change tracking, their change tracking plugin recently in February's Developer Challenge that that the Developer Advocates put out every month, the Developer Challenge. And I can't emphasize to listeners enough how mind-bogglingly amazing it is, and it's magic, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, it also, when you develop a plugin, it really makes you think about how to encapsulate that functionality and have it separate from your main application logic. So I think it's a really nice concept as well as a developer to think about, I build it as a plugin and have it as a component that is reusable. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you mentioned lots of different aspects of what a plugin can do. Front end, back end. What can a plugin do?
Yeah, so there's really a lot of functionality that you can do with a plugin. So like I said, it started out quite basic, where maybe you have some additional custom logic that you add. But for example, going back to change tracking, there's also this user interface, right? So you can add Fiori elements annotations. You can actually change the CDS configuration of your project. Now, what you can do is even, modify the CDS build or like add additional things to CDS build. So if your plugin needs to do something during that build process, it can also link itself in there. And we're even looking into additional concepts for the future where, for example, let's say something like a multi-tenancy application, right? Where, if I need to do something every time a tenant subscribes in my plugin, then we want to even probably enable that. So that's maybe a small outlook there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fantastic. I was trying to think of an analogy of CDS plugins, and the first idea that came to mind was this whole concept of the language server protocol. And we have language servers. So you write one time, the brains behind Node.js, for example, or Go or some language. And then you can connect to that language server by multiple different IDEs, and they can all then benefit from that, outsourced hard work with, just one connection. And that's similar way to think about CAP plugins, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, who is the concept for? Who are the plugin developers?
Yes, I mean, the concept itself, of course, is open to anyone. So I've written a blog post before that shows you how to develop your first plugin. I think you're in the developer advocates as well, show how to use them, right? And in the series you're currently running. If you don't want to just keep your plugin for yourself, but you think it has a value for the bigger community, we have a GitHub organization called CapJS Community, where it's also possible to publish repositories there, and then other developers can use them. Of course, there's some process behind it to get your project there, and from the CAP team ourselves, we also have a list of plugins on CapHire that we support directly. Basically you get the same level of support for those as if it was CAP itself. And for this, there's another community called CapJS, or GitHub organization, where you can find all of those plugins as well. So some of them are provided centrally by us, some of them come from the community, and we're happy for community contributions.
Fantastic. So just moving from sort of theory to practice, as it were, are some of these plugins in use already in places? Can you give me some examples?
Yes, absolutely. So we have, for example, audit logging, which provides audit log functionality where you need audit logs for your application when something happens. I already mentioned the change tracking. One that is going to come very soon is attachments. So a lot of applications, you maybe want to show an avatar of a person. You maybe want to save some PDF files related to an object. So the attachment service connects to the, can connect to object stores, for example, the S3 object store or our document management service, to then really store these attachments. And yeah, there's a couple more, like, for example, OpenTelemetry support, right? So there's a telemetry plugin that, supports this OpenTelemetry standard and allows you to export your logs through the OpenTelemetry protocol. And yeah, let me think. I mean, those are all kind of the official ones that come that are contributions from the CAP team itself. We're working together very closely with some of the BTP services, so that the integration of those, of course, should be as easy as possible. And we're looking into providing more of those plugins there. For example, if you want to do your security via AMS, there would be a plugin for that. If you want to have work zone notifications, where you get notified as an end user if something happens, there's a plugin in development for that as well. And we also already have community contributions, like there's a Fiori launch page plugin, there's the ODW2 proxy.
Exactly.
Those are all delivered as plugins as well. Yeah.
I think the OData v2 proxy is probably one of the oldest plugins, and maybe the most well-known as well, because it's been around for such a long time and it's super useful as well, right? So where is this all headed? You know, what can we look forward to? What can we do today?
Yeah, I mean, you can start to develop the plugins already today, right? As we said, there are already some examples out there. There's, my blog post. There's your Develop Advocate series. There's the CapJS community that is open for contributions, and plugins already have all these different mechanisms to add to an application, so they're ready to use. And yeah, really just get started and develop your plugins, and feel free to share them with us through the CapJS community.
Fantastic. Wow, there's so much to look forward to and so much to sort of consume already. We'll put the links to everything that we've mentioned in this little chat, your blog post, the section in CapIR, the developer challenge that talks about the CDS to the Cap plugins. So it just remains for me to say thanks for coming on CodeTalk, Daniel, and thanks for also helping us all out with the Cap plugin concept.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, and thanks for listening, folks. Bye now.